with respect to those risks and safety, there are basically two kinds of approaches. And with this, we will end our discussion of safety. The two kinds of approaches are commonly placed under the titles of acceleration and precaution. Now, let me start with the, the logical foundation. The logical foundation is that technical innovation, or AI innovation, is going to cause safety risks. We see that in the case of these adversarial inputs. Both the driverless car and these adversarial perturbations are the result of innovative advances. And they're things that smart people came up with in the area of digital technology and information engineering. They're smart advances, they're innovation. Um, then they cause some positive benefits for society, like the driverless car, and some risks, like the possibility the driverless car will kill its inhabitants or others. Right. So we start out with the kind of logical certainty that innovation creates risk, or innovation creates safety challenges. The question is, in some philosophical sense, how should we manage those challenges? And there are two broad schools of thought. One is the acceleration school, is that the kinds of risks that innovation causes should be solved with still more innovation. That is, innovation will solve innovation problems, or innovation will create safety by innovating still faster. So going forward to the adversarial perturbations, the solution to that problem within the acceleration framework is to develop new technology to determine when perturbations exist and, in some sense, see through them. So technology creates the problem of the driverless car. It creates the problem of the adversarial perturbation, and then it creates the solution by learning how to recognize those perturbations and correct for them. That's the acceleration approach. It's always more innovation. If your innovation admittedly causes safety problems, but more innovation will solve those problems. So the role for technology is to continue advancing always faster. By contrast, the precautionary approach takes the I'm not sure it's the opposite, but a nearly opposite stance. What the precautionary approach says is that innovation itself should be slowed until we can foresee what kinds of risks will arise and solve those risk problems. So in this case, advocates will say, look, we are going to privilege safety. We are not going to do things with artificial intelligence until we are sure that it can be deployed safely. And they would make the final claim that in the long run, this slower strategy will actually go faster by having us advance in slow steps and never taking a step forward until we are relatively certain that most safety risks have been envisioned and resolved. Um, Only then do we to start to do something like deploy a driverless car, right? So to go back to the example, we don't deploy driverless cars until we've already imagined what problems exist, like the perturbation problem, and until we've already decided how that problem can be solved. Once we've done those things, then the innovation of the car can go forward. And it will go forward safely, or with some greater guarantee of safety than we have in the acceleration framework. And the argument, as I say here, is that over the long term, this slower advance will make for steadier and perhaps ultimately, in the long run, ultimately will take technology further. By contrast, the acceleration approach is, to some extent, the argument would be it's impossible to foresee all of the safety risks that innovation will create. Innovation is by definition new. The risks will therefore be new. Therefore, they can't be entirely foreseen. So therefore, we are best going forward, discovering what the risks are, and then resolving those risks as part of the same innovative cycle that created the risks in the first place. So Those are fundamentally the two different logics between acceleration and precaution in AI innovation. Again, the simplest term is innovation. Innovation solves innovation problems for acceleration, or problems will be solved so that there can be innovation for precaution. Then, as in ethics, there are some underlying values. For the acceleration approach, innovation itself is intrinsically valuable. The reason we do innovation for acceleration is because innovation is good. If we know nothing else, if we only know that a development creates some new technology, then that in and of itself is good. We don't need to know what it does or why it does it or how it does it. If it does something new, if it is new, creative, innovative, then it is good. Now, we may not choose to use it because we might later first see that it has some bad effects, but in its purity, without knowing anything else, innovation in and itself is good. This would be, in ethical terms, a kind of deontological position. It's just as existing, the act of innovation is something worth having. Innovating is worth having on its own. Whereas, by contrast, the precautionary position is more consequentialist. It says an innovation is only as good or bad as the consequences it yields in the real world. So if an innovation makes things better for human beings, then it's good. If an innovation makes things worse for human beings, then it's bad. But the innovation itself has no value. It is neither good nor bad. So we can we could invent something like the steam engine. In and of itself, it has no value. But over time, we see that the steam engine did create human comforts, expanded lifespans, created human flourishing and well-being. And we say that for those reasons, the invention of the steam engine was good, was worth having. Whereas by contrast, for the acceleration position, the invention of the steam engine, because it is new and different, it is good in and of itself. We don't need to wait and see whether it will have positive or negative effects in society. It's good because it is new. Now, that doesn't mean if an innovation is harmful, like, of course, it happens in the world of biotechnology. It happened in the case of COVID, happens all the time that in labs, people create new chemical compounds which are toxic, which might be diseases or which might be poisons. These are, without doubt, new innovations. In this case, for the acceleration approach says, look, this innovation, this invention is good. It's positive that we have developed this toxin. But because it's a toxin, now that it is developed, we should not deploy it. We should not spread it around the world. We should just put it into a box and close the box and say that's the end of it. But the development itself of the toxin, even though it is a poison, the development itself was good. It's innovation, it's creative, it's new. That word cloud of ideas. It has ethical value. It's worth having. Whereas by contrast, for the precautionary approach, if a toxin is developed in a chemistry lab, a new poison is made, when you see that it is bad for society because it kills people, let's say, randomly, in that case, you see this innovation is bad. But not bad because of the innovation itself, it's bad because of what it would do in society. So there's this fundamental difference between the acceleration approach and the precaution approach. The acceleration approach values innovation in and of itself and as good. The precautionary approach says innovation doesn't matter. It's neither good nor bad. What matters is what the innovation does in the world. And if it creates bad things, then the innovation is bad. If it creates good things, then the innovation is good. So you can see there the innovation, or rather precaution and acceleration, are not exactly opposites. It's not that acceleration thinks that innovation is good and precaution thinks it is bad. No, it's that they have different ways of understanding how you conceive the value of innovation. Acceleration says you conceive it as good in and of itself. Precaution says you conceive it only in terms of what it does. A difference between acceleration and precaution is that for the acceleration approach, the unknown is encouraging. What we do not know is magnetic. There's a desire to find out or discover what it is we don't know. In this way, innovation is something like a traveler who goes abroad, not knowing why they go abroad, but going just to discover what will be there. This is something like a nomadic kind of existence. Many people who've done this through time just buy a one-way airplane ticket somewhere to see what you find. For some people, that's attractive. The idea that something is unknown is good. The idea that something is unknown is magnetic. People say, I am going to a certain place because I don't know what I will find. That's the reason I'm going. That's an acceleration stance. We're innovating things because we don't know what it will do. In the same way, again, that a traveler says, I'm going to buy a one-way ticket to Nepal because I don't know what I will find. I'm not going there because the mountains are good. I'm not going there because I want to develop a new religious belief or because I want to try the food. I'm going because I don't know what I will find there. That's a different kind of ethical stance. The idea that I'm going because I don't know. That's a special kind of traveling. And that same kind of dynamic can be applied to engineering. There's the kind of innovation that happens because you don't know. And it's magnetic. It's the fact that you don't know that makes you want to innovate. That's acceleration. Precaution in this case is something like the opposite. Precaution is the idea we don't innovate until we do know what will happen. And we have to know that it will be good. So we need to know for the precautionary stance, there are two things. One, the unknown is not attractive or magnetic at all. We don't want the unknown. And two, before we do anything, we have to know what we will do and whether it will be good. So, in terms of traveling, the precautionary approach is like the person who makes the hotel reservation in advance and makes all the plans for what they will do each day in advance and knows exactly what they will discover on each day of their trip. That's the precautionary approach. Everything mapped out from day 1 to day 10 of their trip to Nepal. The acceleration approach is I buy a one-way ticket and I go. There are two different mentalities, two different ethics, two different ways of living in the world, and two different ways of managing the relation between AI and safety. Finally, there's a difference between decentralization and centralization for the precautionary approach. Because we need to know the effects of a certain technology before we innovate and create that technology, we can centralize decision making as we can project what will happen and choose certain authorities to make decisions for us about what will and will not be done. Whereas by contrast, since acceleration means we respond to innovation as it happens, decisions about whether the technology should continue forward or be stopped, those decisions will be made by users and by people who are involved in the actual process of the technology. So a good example here would be something like on kind of a trivial level, something like the community notes in X. The way X works in community notes is the tool does not try to say beforehand which tweets will be allowed and not allowed on the platform. Instead, tweets are allowed, and then users see the tweets and vote upon whether or not this tweet, a certain tweet, needs some kind of corrective messaging or needs to be removed, these kinds of things. But it's the users themselves. This is decentralization. It's the users themselves that make the governing decision about which tweets should be allowed and not allowed on the site. As opposed to the precautionary approach would be a more centralized idea that there would be set rules beforehand, which would dictate which tweets could and could not be shown to begin with. Right? So there'd be kind of an authority structure or a set of rules that determine what tweets are accepted and what tweets are rejected. That might be something a little bit more like Blue Sky, or tends to be kind of a more left-wing organization, a centralized authority with rules that are set up before and which determine what will be allowed to happen or not happen. Whereas by contrast, on the Twitter side, you let things happen and then you figure out the rules as you go. Decentralization. And that kind of distinction also functions between the ideas of acceleration and precaution in AI ethics. But to wrap this up, the fundamental idea and the fundamental difference is both the acceleration approach and the precaution approach look at a world of artificial intelligence in which innovation is causing risks. The difference is those who promote acceleration say that those risks which are being caused should lead to even more acceleration, even faster acceleration of innovation, so that those risks may be solved by the same innovative forces that created the problem to begin with. Whereas by contrast, the precautionary position says we see these risks, and that should lead us to halt or slow innovation until we can be certain what those risks are, what other risks might exist, and how they can be resolved. That's the fundamental difference between the two ways of thinking about, on the philosophical level, how safety exists along with artificial intelligence. In review, we have talked about what is safety on the human level, and we had this idea that, well, there's this kind of car accident which happens for no reason that a human could conceive. No human would make the kind of mistake that the driverless car made. And so there's that human sensation of risk out of the blue that captures, in a certain sense, the experience of safety that exists in AI technology. Then we defined safety as AI which is robust and resilient. Robust means that the AI commands inference. It can leap from its training information to other information in the world which is similar but not identical to that information. And it is resilient, meaning that there are fallback systems. When the AI system fails in one way, another part of that system, another aspect of the tool, comes in to save the day. In the Tesla case, we said, imagine that an AI system failed to read a stop sign as a stop sign. It might fail there, but a different part of the system would see oncoming traffic and say stop for a different reason. That's resilience. Then we talked about two kinds of safety threats in AI. There's AI which is less than perfect, and there's AI which is too perfect, beyond perfect. Then we talked about the dynamics for measuring safety. And I think the one that sort of stood out the most there was this idea or the potential to try to level everything, all AI errors, everything from the AI error of a poor movie recommendation on Netflix to the AI error of a fatality in a Tesla car. All of those errors can be put on a single numerical scale. Then we talked about safety strategies, and especially questions about whether or not we're better off having humans in the loop or not in one or another place. And then finally, we talked about innovation and safety. This is an important and ongoing debate in AI ethics today. And the question is whether or not acceleration will solve ethical innovation problems or precaution is the better response to those problems. I think that's enough for safety.